Hi, we're here on Wall Street, and I'm your host, Crystal Carson, and this is Behind the Buzz. Today we're talking to Nathalie from Connectivity Capital about all things female focused for entrepreneurship and investment. So, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard you speak about the future of women in venture capitalism, and there was so much that struck me in that conversation. And then hearing about how you started out, because I think for so many women, it's like, where do I even start as an investor going into the finance world, joining the boys club? So what's your story of how this even unfolded for you?
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's two ways in, right? And one way is nothing wrong with it. It's the more traditional route, right? You study finance, you start off as an associate, in some financial institution, and you kind of move up the ranks. It comes with its pros and its cons, but it's a clear path in, right? You develop, hopefully, a portfolio, you actually get a track record, and you show people, your investing chops over the course of years, and then eventually you start your own firm, right? I went the other route, and the other route is a little circuitous. In hindsight, like anything, it sounds like the dots all connected, it all makes perfect sense. In the middle of it, I had no idea I was going to be an investor, ever. It was never part of the plans.
Yeah.
In fact, I went from being in tech, where there are very few women and we need to fix that problem, to going into finance, where it's infinitely worse, right? Like, I would never have guessed that was going to happen. And so in my case, I'm an entrepreneur. And so, I think that to be a good investor, you kind of need both sides. Investment firms need to have strong operational chops. Once the companies are in and you've selected those businesses, how do you help those companies grow? How do you help them position themselves in the market? And for that, you need operations people, right?
Right.
And I'm the operations mind in a typical investment firm. I am not the person who went up the ranks and learned over the course of a decade how to be a good financier, right?
Right.
For that, I hire people or I partner with people. And so I think that's the other path, right? Become an amazing operations person. Know how to start, launch, grow businesses so that someday when you decide to be an investor full-time, like I decided to do, that's the value that you bring to the table.
That's
right?
amazing. That's such a good way to look at it. Now, you wrote a book as well, Leapfrog.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Again, another accomplishment. So why did you write the book? Like, what is it all about? Kind of Cole's notes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there are probably 30 different reasons, but I have to tell you the number one was that my entire adult life, if you can call 20 years old adult when I started my first company, I have read every business book out there. Right. And what I found, and I kind of thought it was normal, was that you read these books and 90% of the content doesn't apply to you. Because that chapter where it says, raise your friends and family around, when the typical American family doesn't have $5,000 in their bank account, like, who are these friends and family we're supposed to be raising money from, right? So you kind of throw that away. And the part that says fail fast, and it's okay if you go bankrupt because people will still invest in your second or third company. And I'm thinking, bankruptcy? Absolutely not okay. No safety net. No parents who can, save the day for me. Like, no way, right? They're looking, my family as an immigrant kid are looking for me to propel the family forward, right? And so much of what is in the typical business books doesn't apply to the typical entrepreneur.
Yes.
That I finally came to the point where I was like, somebody needs to write a freaking book that applies to the rest of us, which is to say to the majority. And that was the main motivation for me. It's let me write a book that actually reflects the experience of the majority of entrepreneurs. And it turns out in the United States, women are starting more companies than men. And 8 out of every 10 of those companies are started by women of color. So that's who the book is written for.
Amazing. Okay. And then with that, right now, State of the Nation. You are obviously really focused on helping women get funded and helping bring female entrepreneurs to the forefront and get more women in the investment community. What are the biggest pain points? Where have you seen the biggest growth or the shift? Like, have you experienced a shift? Are you seeing things change? What still needs to change? I know there's a loaded questions, but to give some of our viewers and our audience some idea of, what's the landscape really like right now?
Yeah. I have mostly bad news, but I have some optimistic ideas for how to fix it. The bad news is that same group of people I mentioned, right? Women in the United States are starting more companies than men, and 8 out of every 10 of those is started by a woman of color. Well, women of color get 0.2% of venture capital. So
it's nothing.
People often cite the 2, 3, 4%, depending on what study you're looking at, that women get. But if you slice that down to the single most entrepreneurial community in this country, they're getting close to zero. And so the numbers are not good. The numbers are in fact moving down. if we look at women and especially people of color that are in the investing world, from last year to this year, the number of women that got money as investors actually went down. So generally speaking, the trend is going the opposite direction of what we want. And what upsets me about that is that I know, and I have ideas about how we fix that, but I think what's happening is that we're being kind of lulled into complacency because there is so much media attention around the topic.
Yes.
That I think that what's happening is people are kind of saying like, oh, they've got that. You know, like
right.
We're talking about it so much that like it's being handled. And the thing is it's not being handled, and it kind of falls on all of us to fix it.
Right.
And I do think that part of our problem is the obsession with women in the corner office. I care about women in the corner office. I'm a woman in the corner office.
Right.
But I do think that we have to think collectively about how do we invest in companies that benefit women at large.
Right.
So like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of women, right? And if you do that, and if you invest in companies that benefit women at large, then you have a whole ecosystem of women who can pay their mortgages, who can send their kids to school, who can pay for healthcare,
yes.
right? And a woman who is out of survival mode is a woman who is going to be more entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one of the solutions. And the other one is just using our right of complaint. Right? If you think about the massive sources of capital, the pension funds, the endowments at big colleges and universities, the places where people put their 401ks, those big institutional capital sources have to decide to invest in fund managers like me, for example.
Right.
And they're not doing it.
Right.
They're investing in fund managers that look like the executives of most big financial institutions.
Right.
They're investing in white male fund managers. And so I think that if I'm a teacher in California and I know that I am contributing, even if it's just a little bit, into the pension fund that is actually over $300 billion strong in California,
right.
I have the power to pick up the phone and call CalSTRS and say, hey, how diverse is your fund manager cohort? Are there any, in my case, Latinas that are actually being enlisted by my pension fund to manage my money? Right? I think the average citizen has more power to influence this problem than we realize.
Right, and they actually just have to figure out what those things are, or how to make the call, or just pick up the phone and ask questions.
Totally. Your college endowment, where, who's managing that money, right? Your 401k. Tons of places where we have a voice and we can make it heard.
Yeah, and people just have to ask questions. So with that, where are you seeing, where are you investing and where are you seeing women coming up with really innovative concepts or disruptive concepts that you're seeing success, that they are actually getting funded and they're moving forward, and where's your eye, where are your eyes at, and where do you?
Yeah. I see, first of all, as a category, crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is the one and only current category where women outperform men. Oh, I love it, right? And so it's kind of like, I want us to do better on the venture capital side. I want loans to go to more women-owned businesses. I want large institutions to invest in women-led funds. I want all of those things to happen. But today, how do we pay the bills?
Yeah,
how do we
get it done?
What's working today is crowdfunding, and there's a lot of different kinds, right? There's the good old-fashioned crowdfunding where you give away a t-shirt or a sample of your product or whatever before it's ready. But then there's also equity crowdfunding where you're giving away a slice of your company, or you're maybe doing debt, crowdfunding, where you're actually taking out debt from the local community that already supports you. So I would kind of say, look, we're already succeeding in this one category. Let's double down. Today, it's working.
Great. And then as far as your personal investments or what you're venturing into, what are those categories? What should people maybe be considering if they're looking to invest in more women or trying to get some insights about what you're doing?
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
So two things that are, I think, the most compelling, and it's where I focus the most on. It's healthcare.
Yeah.
Because I think that healthcare is one amazing way where not only do women represent the majority of the people impacted by healthcare solutions, right? Mm-hmm. Even in the case of, say, I have a friend who's developed the first ever drug for children with autism. Autism disproportionately affects little boys. But if you look at the economic reality and the economic impact of autism, something like over 80 or 90, depending on what study you look at, of all marriages involving a child with autism results in divorce.
Wow.
And since the dawn of time, the economic impact that falls squarely on women in the case of divorced families. And so the economic impact of autism is falling disproportionately on the shoulders of women. And so that, for example, is something that at first glance doesn't seem like it's gendered, and yet it really is, right? So healthcare is really important to me, and I think that it's both an amazing way to make great returns and to make massive impact. And then the other thing is what I consider to be probably the single most important problem of our time, which is climate, right?
Yes.
And so climate and infrastructure, which is to say the same thing, right? is an amazing business opportunity, and I think that too often it's framed as a charitable opportunity. Like, oh my gosh,
Yes, save the world.
Save the world, let me give to the Sierra Fund and various different organizations. Fine, those are great things to do with your philanthropic dollars, but what people don't realize is that a lot of people made a lot of money making the landline obsolete by bringing in mobile technology into the world, right?
Right.
And there is no reason why the same thing can't happen here. We have obsolete, century-old technology powering and structuring everything that we touch, from our bridges to how we power our houses and our cars. And now all of that technology needs to fall by the wayside and be made obsolete, and new technology and new infrastructure needs to be brought in. And
Yes.
the same way that everyone in past transitions have made a lot of money with new technology,
Yes.
the same thing needs to happen here. And so I really feel like what people aren't putting together is that the opportunity to reverse climate change is actually far more lucrative than ruining climate.
Yeah, and continuing on this path. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.
This is Financial Buzz. Check us out online at financialbuzz.com, and we'll see you there.